All right, so this is going to be part 1B out of a 3-part series for creating a bootable USB stick. Last time we did it with Windows. Now we're going to use Apple's OS X, and next time we'll be doing this pretty much the same thing through Linux. So what we want to do is we want to open a terminal window. If you're not sure how to open those, you can go under the Launchpad, and then under Other, and then there's Terminal right there, and that will open a window similar to this one. However, it'll probably just be black and white text. I've customized this one because I use my Mac a lot. And the next command that we're going to want to type is the mount command, and pay attention to, this is, by the way, without the USB stick installed or plugged in anywhere. And you want to pay attention to the drives that are there now. For example, we've got a disk 2, a disk 3, and a disk 1. These last two digits are just the slice or the partition that's on those particular disks. And so we want to make sure that we don't use any of these with this command, or we'll end up erasing our hard drive. And that you probably don't want to do. Now let's go ahead and install the memory stick. And Apple by default is going to go ahead and mount it for you. Now that assumes that this is a fresh memory, a fresh USB stick that you've purchased. If you've already burnt another ISO to this stick using a different operating system or a different process, not all of the ISOs are going to be readable. The actual file systems would be readable by Apple, in which case what you need to do is you'll get a little pop-up message here that says it doesn't understand it, and you can reformat the disk, reformat the USB stick. And now what we should be able to do is type the mount command and see which disk this guy is using. So we have Untitled over here, and then we just match it up with Untitled right here. Apple tends to mount everything under /volumes, so you can see what's not normally part of the file system right there. So as opposed to like / or /var, that kind of thing, or /home. So we know that this one is disk 4. So there's a special command we have to type here for Apple that you normally don't have to type on Linux, and I'm just going to kind of zip back through a bunch of commands I've typed here using the up arrow key to find it. What did I do with it? Nope. So you can't just, here it is. You would think you could come on over here and right click on this Untitled and just say eject, but don't do that, because Apple seems to make the differentiation in the kernel as to whether the device itself is ejected or the file systems on the device are ejected. So if you do this option right here, it's first going to, of course, unmount the file systems, and then finally actually remove the device from the kernel, so that when you run your dd command, it won't recognize the disk 4. So that's what this command over here is used for, the unmount disk. And since we already know that it's disk 4, again, we just ignore the last two because that's the partition itself. And a lot of these commands have to have elevated privileges, so we just kind of use the sudo command. So I'm going to hit turn on that. I'll type my normal login password for the Mac. And all volumes were unmounted successful. So the next thing we want to do is actually, so I've already got my my ISO here on the desktop. Download that from Red Hat, and so we'll scroll back through till we get to the. Is this the right one? Yes, it is. Okay, so let me explain this command a bit. So again, the sudo command gives me the ability to execute things as root without actually becoming root, so it's a whole lot safer. I could just sudo up to root and run everything that way, but if you forget or mess up, then you could wipe your machine. So anytime you're on a Unix Linux type of machine, you really want to use sudo when possible. Okay, so anyhow, the dd command is going to its parameters. It's going to, for an input file, it's going to use the kernel. I mean, not the kernel, the ISO image here. That that file name wraps around there. That'll go to my desktop, and the output file is going to be the disk 4, which I know is my USB memory stick, and this ampersand PID $! Exclamation point actually stores the process ID for this program when it's running in this this variable called PID. And I'll show you what that's used for here in a little bit after I actually start it. So we hit the hit the return button, and it's actually running. Now what we can do is go back to, kind of scroll back through my history, and this is a you can actually issue this type of kill to the running process, and this is, if you'll notice, the $ PID again. And so what this will do is this will actually have the dd command spit out where it's at in the middle of the copy. So we can hit return, and so far that's the amount of work that it's done. So it's read in 110,000 blocks, and it's written out 156,000 blocks, and that equates to this number of bytes. So if I hit my up arrow key and I can hit my return again, it's going to give me a new update. And of course that wasn't very clean, but you can see that it's actually progressing. You've got 59 seconds here, 36 seconds here, and then the number of bytes per second that it's transferring. So that gives you some semblance of that it's actually doing something, because unfortunately the dd command on the Mac doesn't have a verbose mode on it to have these things updating on the screen real time, like every second or every 2 seconds or something along those lines. Of course, obviously most of, well, actually some of the USB sticks have lights on, like most of the SanDisks do. The Toshibas don't, at least the one I'm looking at right now doesn't. So if you don't have the light and you're just curious whether it's finished yet or not, then you can do that. Now eventually what will happen is it will finish, and you'll get some output here on the screen, so you can kind of just let that sit there and run. So what I'm going to do is fast forward the video to the end, because there's really no sense in you guys sitting here a good 20 minutes, because I've got, that's what it should have done each time, is something clean like that. And I'll do it again, just one more. You can see the numbers are changing. You want to use as fast as possible. I've got a USB 3 port, but I think my stick is probably a 1 or a 2 at the most. So so this burning this 4 GB image to the stick is going to take a while. So once it's finished, Apple will try to mount it again, and when it does, it's going to give you this message. It's going to pop up here on the screen, and I'll show you that. I'll fast forward to that point and pick back up at that when that happens. Okay, so we're done, and so in this case what we want to do is say eject, and then you can go put that in your other machine that you're going to build. And there we go. Yep, she comes back and says it's done right there. Keep your eyes out for the next one in the series, which will be using Linux, and the command will be very similar to what we have here, just oh so slightly different.